Okay, welcome back to the latest episode of Tech and Learning Conversations. Today, we're diving into an issue that every parent, educator, and frankly, anyone who cares about the digital spaces our kids inhabit really needs to hear. When we think about online safety, most of us think about social media, TikTok, Instagram, the Facebooks, the usual suspects. But there's another digital world that's even bigger, and it's been flying largely under the radar, and that's online gaming. And we're not talking about a niche hobby here. There are 3.3 billion gamers worldwide. The average age, 34. More numbers. 70% of US households have at least one gamer. This is an industry larger than television and movies combined. And yet, within this massive ecosystem, there's an underworld, anonymous chat rooms where 83 million American players have faced harassment, where extremist recruitment happens, and where hate speech thrives unchecked. My guest today is Morielle Lotan. She's the CEO and founder of the ADIR Challenge, a nonprofit that fights anti-Semitism and hate through technology and innovation. She just wrapped the inaugural Game Changers Fellowship that was last month in New York City that brought together 40 high school and college students to build real deployable tech solutions to combat extremism in gaming. The conversation really opened my eyes to threats I didn't fully understand and to solutions I didn't know were possible. So let's get into it. Okay, Morielle, thank you so much for meeting with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Especially, I know you have a busy schedule, and I guess we can just jump right into the weeds here. You just finished your fellowship, right? And did that occur in New York City? Tell us a little bit about that and what the day was like.
So yes, we just finished last week the first 2025 Game Changers Fellowship. It was incredibly uplifting and optimistic, I have to say. Going into it, I was much more nervous about what the outcomes would be. But essentially, we accepted 40 students, high school and college, both from within and beyond the Jewish community, Israeli and American. And we essentially created mini studios for the students to compete with each other and try to create tech prototypes that the gaming industry needed in order to combat hate. They met at 8 a.m. and the day finished at 9 p.m. They had 2 preliminary sessions, which taught them, I would say, some theory that was needed in order to arrive at that day and have a sense of what was going on in the underworld, specifically around gaming. And then 10 incredible mentors from the industry met with them, and they worked very diligently, and I think also in a bit of a clandestine way. They each kind of took a piece of the room off to themselves. We were partnered with the NYU's Center for the Study of Anti-Semitism. And then at the end of the day, we had some judges come in and evaluate the team's work, as well as the companies who worked with us on defining the challenges, and we selected a few winners.
Amazingly important topic, and I like to be timely, but this is certainly an unfortunate subject to have to be timely. And you mentioned that underworld, and it's something that really has just kind of sprung into my consciousness in the past few weeks because of the recent assassination of Charlie Kirk, and the whole aftermath of the the alleged assassin being a gamer. And the whole disconnect in the languages and the cultures of what mainstream media was trying to pick up versus what I saw. I mean, I have my channel still on maybe not the underground, but just like in online communities, and the disparity between the two, and the disparity between a 22-year-old and a 42-year-old, and just in the language, especially when it comes to gaming. How did you come upon that particular aspect of this situation, and how did it evolve?
Yeah. So first of all, we found out about the news while we were really heads down into Game Changers, and in many ways didn't even talk about the correlation between the assassination and what we were doing, because it was just so early. And we really try and be careful not to pretend to be experts in areas that we're not, and also just wait for news to kind of unravel. But I think, just to touch upon something that you said, I think a lot of people, including myself, I only got involved in gaming really this way about a year ago, and I'll explain how. But it isn't fringe youth culture. I think that this idea that it's fringe is problematic. It's very much a mainstream. There are 3.3 billion gamers around the world. Oftentimes, I ask people what the average age of a gamer is, and most of the answers are usually between 9 and 15, when in fact it's 34, right? We have
Yeah.
70% of US households have at least one person in the household that's a gamer. So it's much bigger, which again shouldn't surprise us given the fact that gaming is a larger industry than TV and movies combined.
Yeah.
Back to your question though, we issued a piece of research about a year and a half ago when we started ADIR, when we started ADIR, that was looking to show us where there are gaps, where technology could move the needle on combating anti-Semitism and hate. We knew that it wasn't all technologies, but in order to create programming that could have an impact short-term, mid-term, and long-term, we wanted to know what those pockets were. And because we're a startup, we wanted to know which areas we could be most uniquely positioned to make a difference in. And gaming came out of that research, which is called the Human Tech Action Blueprint. It's available to download online as one of those areas. So that was really the beginning of figuring out that it's somewhere we wanted to be. I think that there's also a part of it, which was, as a small nonprofit startup, you want to make a difference. And there's a lot of redundancy in the nonprofit world, for better or worse. It was really important for us that we were efficient in what we were doing. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we managed to overcome in this first iteration was to get multiple stakeholders to come around a table together: industry, researchers, students, gaming studios, gaming companies, investors, and have a conversation with us as a starting point. And the more you kind of peel that onion about understanding that it's not so much the game itself, even though there are problems there we could talk about, but about the chat rooms, the underworld, like we call it, associated with games, which is, this trust and safety. Then you start to understand that it's really a space where a lot of extremism happens, a lot of, probing into the children's lives happens, and recruiting happens. And we saw it also with the Taylor Swift, there was a Taylor Swift concert, I think it was almost 2 summers ago now. Thankfully, it was averted, but the bomber who had been recruited was recruited on a game, in the chat room of a game. So it's much more than just about combating anti-Semitism. It really is a space that we need to be paying attention to, and with lots of problems, including, and I'll stop after I say the next thing, but the fact that it's anonymous, right? It's a space that's anonymous.
Right. And yeah, and the other thing that intrigued me about your work and with the fellowship is that the first instinct is, and this is certainly a big part of it, is mental health of students and those chat groups, which are inherently coming down to anonymous propaganda and gossip and decidedly directed things. On the other hand, you were looking at specifically tech specific solutions to that. And I know some of the solutions that I read about included the AI powered moderation, and also the Waze style reporting system. So, it's kind of like you're fighting fire with fire, as opposed to maybe bringing in the psychologist, right? Or bringing in what a traditional analog solution might be the most apparent thing.
Right. Well, we view ourselves as a node on a much larger value chain of actors who have to come together and offer a holistic solution. So we are great at being a catalyst for change, but we have A, no intention, and B, are very humble about the fact that we need to have big partners around us who take the technological prototypes and solutions that we develop and implement them. So for us, deploying the solutions is extremely critical, which is why when we went about trying to decide on which challenges to select for 2025 and probably even 2026, we wanted challenges or problems, which is just a different way of saying it, that technology and AI could help very quickly. So the 3 solutions are really immediately deployable, which is extremely positive for us and what we're looking for when we were looking to evaluate the teams. I think as a nonprofit, a very lean nonprofit, now looking forward, the more we're able to put meat on the bones of this program and enhance it and expand it and scale it, I think that what we'll see is we can deepen the level of problem sets that we potentially offer to the cohorts, but that'll take a little bit of time.
Yeah. Yeah. I was also intrigued about the various groups that you had come in, and including a number of companies from the gaming industry. And it's something here in the ed tech world is always kind of a question as well. Kind of an awakening to the realization of the responsibility of the industry to do something about this. And now, so I'm, as a dad, like, well, here's an easy solution: ban chat rooms.
Right,
Right?
right. Or
Don't
make
have
people
chat rooms.
right, or make it so that it's not anonymous anymore. Like reverse the mistake. Or this morning I have a 9.5-year-old, almost 10-year-old, and I don't know. I guess it's not so good for him that his mother is so now deep into the
Come on, Mom.
darkness
Yeah.
darkness of gaming. But we have an ongoing conversation about which games and which platforms, really none, but very few games he's allowed to participate in. And there's a conversation that we have at home. This is a really big issue, which is parents. First of all, they don't know.
No.
They just don't know what's going on. And also, it's very scary to hear about yet another front, right? This is another front. The gaming space is another front, yet another front. We just got finished talking about TikTok and social media, and now here you are talking to us about gaming. There's an overwhelming paralysis that I think is happening, and we have a role, even in our small nonprofit, to educate and to not only say what areas are dangerous and bad, but what you can be doing as parents, what conversations you can be having, and hopefully, and most importantly, what language and tools to give these kids so that they can identify the space that they're in, and so that they notice when a symbol or a word is being used and they didn't know that that was anti-Semitic or hate-based, and now they do, right? So that's a huge part about what this is doing, is that educational bridge to parents and to those communities.
Yeah. So now maybe I would say many, if not most, of our readers and listeners, on top of also being parents, are educators, obviously, and have a day-to-day job where those 8, 9, and 10-year-olds are in class and maybe out at recess, all using their devices. And what are you doing? I'm playing Roblox. Like, well, no, you're not. Right? I mean, there's like an education that needs to be going on as a professional. And then even when you raise it up to when you talk about administrators who have acceptable use policies for how to use devices, and students right now may be within the parameters of those acceptable uses. But as you said, once you get into that underworld chat room, so what insights, what advice would you have for those folks and how to kind of integrate that into their day-to-day responsibilities? As if they don't have enough.
No, yeah. First of all, I think this is a paradigm shift moment for education, both at the parental level and at the professional level. I think these are big questions. Look, I think we all agree as parents and as teachers and as communities that we make sure the kids know how to cross the road before they cross, right? To look left, to look right. You probably have your kid walk in front of you a couple of blocks while you're walking behind them to make sure that they're safe. There are all kinds. For some of us, you're not going to send your kids over to a home to play if you knew that there were weapons in the drawers. There's all kinds of analogies I can make. I think we have to develop language, first of all, and an understanding to be able to meet the kids. And I'm saying kids for a second, but I'm jumping back to what I said about that average age at 34.
Yeah.
We need to be having the conversations at the level of where the players are. And we need to understand that it's becoming more socially unacceptable for these kids to say, I'm not in it because I'm not allowed. Like, that's not an easy thing for them to carry. And so we need to help them do that. So I think first and foremost, educators need to know about what's happening, not out of hysteria, but fact-based learning needs to be something that they're equipped with. And we need to find ways to scale programs like this into every high school. Let's start with America, but we could take a leadership position for the rest of the world and into colleges. And I just want to share something with you, Kevin, which is when we asked the high school students how they felt being in cohorts with college students, we thought that they would be a little nervous to show up as themselves and as solvers. And they all said, 100% of the high schoolers said that they felt not only that they had a place and a voice, but it was the first time where they didn't feel like they were just a high schooler and the other was a college student, and that they feel like they have this big brother or big sister who can help them navigate even, their college application and their college life. So I think it's a multi-stakeholder approach that we need.
Yeah. Well, Morielle, your work is so important. And we touched upon all the various aspects of it. And I appreciate the work that you're doing and thank you for it. And I hope, we can help spread the word about that to not only to parents and to teachers, but also to the industry itself, to begin to come up with innovative ideas as some of these technologies. And the readers and listeners of this conversation will be able to get pointers to that on the page, around the conversation.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing what sort of solutions you come up with next year at Fellowship 26.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I just want to end by saying that for us, success really isn't just about the number of students and solutions. It really is, and our North Star is extremely focused on adoption of them and also educating and bringing awareness so that action can take place. So thank you for having me.
I want to thank Morielle for that incredibly important conversation. What strikes me most is that it isn't about creating panic. It's about creating awareness and, more importantly, action. And here's what gives me hope. 95% of those students that participated said they'd recommend that program or participate again. 87% plan to continue the projects they started. These young people aren't just learning about the problem, but they're becoming the solution. Next week, Brooke Martin, Executive Director of CTE at Aldine Independent School District in Houston, Texas, talks with me about how incorporating data can help faculty guide curricula and also help students succeed in getting jobs. So again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.